show alcohol abuse is surging among women. According to one study, during the pandemic, women increased their heavy drinking days by 41% compared to before the pandemic. And research shows psychological stress related to the pandemic has led to higher rates of alcohol consumption in women, but not in men. For more on this, I'd like to bring in Dr. Bankole Johnson. He is a psychiatrist, neuroscientist, addiction expert, and chief medical officer for Adial Pharmaceuticals. Dr. Johnson, welcome. Thanks very much for being with us. Why is pandemic stress causing women to consume alcohol at higher rates than men?
Thank you for inviting me on your show. Well, it's obvious, I think, because women often bear the brunt of looking after the family. They also tend to have to look after young children who are now at home more often. And there's also the increased social isolation. And as you know, social isolation is a very difficult problem with women in general, because it tends to occur because during the time in which the workplace is active, the kids are at school, and therefore there's social isolation. So here we have a problem in which during the pandemic, it's difficult to get people to visit you. It's difficult to get other people to be in touch with you. And here you are at home, not much to do.
And doctor, is this more prevalent in women of a certain age group?
Well, usually women in the age group of about in their 30s up to probably the mid-50s are the most affected, because they tend to be women in childbearing age, and also they tend to have younger children at home. As you know, the more young children you have at home as a woman, the higher the risk of depression, the higher the risk of alcohol use disorder. And during this pandemic, we're coming on to the second pandemic, which is a pandemic of alcohol use, which I think is going to be pretty difficult. At the current time, the estimates are that almost 150,000 more people are going to die from the effects of alcohol use disorder this year than they did the last year. That's a terrible statistic.
Well, heavy drinking affects women and men differently because of biological differences. Doctor, what are some of the consequences of alcohol abuse for women?
Well, in women, it's particularly a problem because it affects all the organs. For example, it makes the bones thinner, so there's a greater risk of osteoporosis. It affects fertility. It also affects growth. It affects the immune system in women, perhaps a little bit more than men. So in general, women tend to have more effects of alcohol than men, and also their livers are smaller pound for pound, and therefore they can't metabolize alcohol as fast. So the problem is that women tend to have greater health effects due to alcohol use disorder on the heart, the kidneys, the liver, and also on the sexual organs than men tend to.
Well, what are some ways women can combat alcohol abuse while managing stress?
Well, you nailed it there. Stress is really the important thing. So there's no one size that fits all. Therefore, it's important for women who feel under stress to be able to reach out to their family practitioner or to a helper to be able to reduce that stress. The other method would be to try and work out how to contact a center that works to reduce alcohol drinking and, in fact, helps women to get back onto their feet. Now, because of COVID, some of these services have been fairly upturned, but they're beginning to pick up now. So this is the right time, if you need help, to start to seek help, whether you're a woman and also if you're a man, of course.
Meanwhile, some drugstores like CVS and Rite Aid are beginning to offer mental health services. Doctor, do you think increased accessibility will help deal with psychological issues that have worsened during the pandemic, including those that have led to an increase in alcohol consumption?
Absolutely. The greater the access there is, the less the stigma. Unfortunately, the stigma of alcohol use disorder still remains fairly prevalent in the United States. Therefore, if we have greater access, we have greater dialogue, greater access to doctors who are able to provide either medicines and psychological help to be able to aid women and men to be able to get off alcohol, all the better.
All right, Dr. Bankole Johnson, thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on your show.